A new beginning in America. Anna Porter's heart fluttered somewhere between hope and anxiety as she watched the Chicago skyline grow larger through the airplane window. She'd left behind the familiarity of her small hometown in Oregon to follow her husband, Jack, into his world, a world of ambition, opportunities, and unfamiliar faces. The city felt overwhelming, but also a promise, a fresh start for their young marriage. Jack had met Anna when he was studying for his MBA on the West Coast. Anna, a reserved, thoughtful woman, had been drawn to Jack's confident energy and fast-talking charisma. Their love had blossomed quickly, and it hadn't been long before Jack proposed. Anna's family admired his ambition, and her friends envied the whirlwind romance. She'd imagined their life in dazzling, hopeful colors. Arriving in Chicago, Anna tried to embrace everything with an open mind. The city was alive, buses screeching, people bustling, apartments stacked high into the skyline. Their new home was a modest condo in a leafy, affluent neighborhood, chosen largely by Jack's mother, Margaret. It was Margaret who greeted Anna at the door, arms crossed, lips pursed in a thin smile. From the very first day, Anna struggled to adjust. The customs, the pace, and above all, Margaret's looming presence made her feel like a guest instead of a new member of the family. Margaret was a woman of few words, but every sentence seemed tinged with judgment. She ran her household like a Navy ship, dinners exactly at 6, beds made with hospital corners, not a dish out of place. Anna, who grew up in a laid-back, loving home, sometimes faltered with the new expectations. Jack, eager to please his mother and thrive at his new finance job, was rarely home. When he was, conversation tended to revolve around his work or Margaret's opinions. Anna found herself lost in the flurry of unfamiliar routines and silent rules. Margaret was always watching, always correcting. "That's not how we do things here, Anna." She insisted Anna use her favorite casserole recipe. "I'll show you how it's really done." Decorated the apartment with her own touch and offered unsolicited advice on everything, from table manners to the best preschools in the city, even though Anna and Jack didn't yet have children. Yet Anna was determined to make things work. She joined a local community center, hoping to make friends and adjust to the city's rhythm. She practiced her cooking, learned Chicago's transit system, and sent cheerful updates home, leaving out the parts about Margaret's chilly silences and her own sleepless nights. Sometimes she wondered if she could ever truly belong. One overcast Sunday morning, Anna stood on the apartment balcony, looking out at the endless rows of brownstones and feeling both very small and incredibly brave. Beneath the weight of expectation and homesickness, Anna made herself a promise. If this new beginning was going to work, it would be on her terms too. There would be heartache, but she would bring her whole resilient self to this chapter of her life. She turned back inside, determined to face another day, hope flickering quietly in her chest, bright as the morning sun, just breaking through the clouds' subtle pressures within the family. Anna quickly discovered that life as a daughter-in-law in the Porter household was a quiet test, one that required constant vigilance and unflagging patience. Even after a few weeks, the novelty of Chicago had worn thin, replaced by an uneasy routine shaped almost entirely by Margaret's unspoken expectations. Margaret wielded control in small, precise ways. Though she rarely raised her voice or issued direct commands, Anna could feel the tension in every interaction. Margaret would appear silently behind Anna as she set the dinner table, straightening a napkin or adjusting a fork, her measured silence carrying more weight than a scolding. If Anna arrived downstairs a few minutes late, Margaret would check her watch but say nothing, the disappointment clear in her tight-lipped nod. The living room was a testament to Margaret's standards, spotless, orderly, and filled with heirlooms Anna was afraid to touch. On weekends, while Jack escaped to long runs along the lake shore or brunches with old college friends, Anna stayed behind, acutely aware that Margaret preferred things done right. "We have traditions in this family," Margaret would say quietly, handing Anna her late husband's meticulously folded flag to dust, or insisting on the correct way to fold laundry, as if these details protected their legacy. Jack, meanwhile, grew more distant, anxious to deliver at his new job, and eager to please his demanding mother. He often worked late, returning after Anna and Margaret had eaten dinner in careful silence. When he was home, conversation was shallow, mostly work stories or gentle reminders from Margaret about what hadn't met her standards that day. Jack rarely took Anna's side when small disagreements arose. Instead, he would shrug and say, "That's just how Mom likes it." At times, Anna felt invisible, a helper, not a wife or daughter. Holidays were especially fraught. Margaret orchestrated Thanksgiving down to the minute, handing Anna a rigid schedule and a shopping list for the grocery store. Anna's own family traditions, a favorite stuffing recipe, singing in the kitchen, were dismissed with a perfunctory, "We don't do that here." When Anna suggested lighting her childhood Christmas candles, Margaret smiled thinly. "Maybe next year. For now, let's keep things simple." Tensions simmered just below the surface, never quite erupting into outright conflict, but always shaping Anna's day. Any mistake, no matter how small, was met with a soft sigh or a thinly veiled correction. Anna started second-guessing her every move. Was her coffee too strong? Her thank you card not formal enough? Her voice too loud on the phone with her family? She began to censor herself, speaking less and retreating more deeply into the walls of the apartment. Amid all this, Anna's loneliness grew. She missed her own mother's warmth and easy laughter, her father's gentle humor, her hometown's slower pace. In Chicago, she felt she was always performing, always being judged against some invisible standard. Even her efforts to carve out small freedoms, an afternoon at the art museum, a call to an old friend, were met with Margaret's subtle disapproval. Having time for yourself is nice, but family comes first. Yet Anna refused to let herself unravel. She found small joys where she could: a neighbor's smile, a new book, the comfort of a hot shower at the end of the day. The pressure inside the Porter home was constant, but she gritted her teeth, determined not to let Margaret's silent rules define her. Still, beneath Anna's resolve, the first quiet cracks in her marriage and her sense of self were beginning to form career and sacrifice. The routine of the Porter household had become suffocating. Each day, a silent choreography of scrutiny and self-correction. As winter blanketed Chicago in gray, Anna began to feel that the walls of their condo were closing in. After months of struggling to belong, of measuring every word, every gesture, she realized she needed something for herself, a space where she could breathe and remember who she was before moving to Chicago. Determined to reclaim a sense of purpose, Anna dusted off her resume and started applying for jobs. With Jack's long hours and Margaret's constant monitoring, the process was not easy. Job applications and interviews had to be scheduled around Margaret's routines, and Anna could feel her mother in law's skepticism every time she mentioned a job prospect. "Are you sure you'll have time for that, dear? Jack and I do like our dinners together," Margaret would remark, her tone perfectly neutral, but her meaning pointed. Despite these obstacles, Anna pressed on. Her background in marketing and her keen attention to detail caught the interest of several local companies. She landed a position as an assistant account executive at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown, her first professional achievement since arriving in Chicago. The offer, though not glamorous, filled Anna with pride and relief. She felt, for the first time in months, that she was moving forward on her own terms. However, balancing her career with her home life proved an immense challenge. Each morning, Anna would rise early to prepare breakfast, the way Margaret preferred, before braving the freezing city streets and the packed subway. At work, she focused fiercely, eager to make a good impression and justify her new independence. Her coworkers were friendly, some offering genuine kindness, others curious about the quiet, hardworking newcomer from the West Coast. The culture was fast-paced, competitive, a far cry from the warmth of her old life, but Anna threw herself into projects and late-night brainstorming sessions, savoring each hard-won success. Jack, meanwhile, seemed only distantly supportive. He congratulated Anna when she received the job offer, but quickly returned to his own work concerns. "Just don't let it stress you out too much," was all he'd said, checking emails at the dinner table. Margaret, seeing her influence wane, doubled down on her expectations. She began to question Anna's absence during the day, offering backhanded compliments. "You're so ambitious, Anna. I just hope the family doesn't suffer," and pointed reminders that a wife's first responsibility was at home. Trying to keep the peace, Anna found herself juggling impossible demands. She often stayed up late to complete chores she hadn't managed after long days at the office. She skipped lunches to call home, reassuring Margaret that the laundry would be done and the pantry well stocked. Guilt nipped at her heels whenever she considered taking even a brief afternoon to herself. Still, Anna persisted. Fridays became her favorite day. Casual, energized at work, and full of accomplishment. She earned praise from her manager and was soon trusted with greater responsibilities. Sometimes, glimpses of her old self broke through. Confident, imaginative, free. Yet beneath the surface, Anna's exhaustion was mounting. Jack's hours at work grew longer. He was often vague about his late meetings and weekend commitments. Anna noticed subtle changes: secretive text messages, hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room, and a growing emotional gap between them. Some nights, Anna would lie awake, replaying awkward silences at dinner, the way Jack's gaze slid past hers, and the sharpness in Margaret's remarks about family unity. But instead of confronting her suspicions, Anna buried them, telling herself Jack was just overworked, that every marriage had its rough patches. There was no time for despair. There was only work, endless effort, and the fragile hope that by striving harder, she could hold her world together. As spring crept into the city, Anna realized what it meant to sacrifice. She was learning how much a person could endure for the people they love, even when that love sometimes felt lonely or unrewarded. In claiming her career, she was not only fighting for independence, but for her dignity, her sanity, and a sense of self-worth she desperately needed to survive. The secret revealed. By early spring, Anna had learned to balance her demanding work schedule with the relentless expectations at home, though the fatigue was never far behind. The chill winds of winter had faded, but inside the Porter household, Anna's unease had only deepened. Strain marked her marriage in subtle but unmistakable ways. Jack's distance, the odd hours, and the unbreakable spell of Margaret's silent oversight. At first, Anna dismissed the gnawing thoughts as exhaustion or paranoia. Jack had always been restless, especially during times of change, and she convinced herself that the growing gulf between them was inevitable, given their workload and Margaret's constant demands. But as the days passed, a pattern began to take shape, one that Anna could no longer ignore. Jack came home later and later. When he did appear, his phone was always in hand. He kept it face down on the counter, screen glowing at odd hours. His laughter, once so easily shared with Anna in the evenings, became whispers over the phone, muffled behind closed doors. Anna could no longer recall the last time he looked her in the eye during dinner. It was a Thursday evening when everything started to unravel. Anna returned home early from the office, grateful to catch a break from the blare of downtown. As she stepped into the foyer, Anna heard Jack's voice, soft and urgent, from his office down the hall. She paused, her heart thudding, as Jack said quietly, "No, she's still at work. I'll call you later." His tone was warm, almost tender. Anna retreated, her mind racing, wishing desperately for some innocent explanation. That night, Jack sat across from Anna and Margaret at the dinner table, distractedly pushing food around his plate. He barely spoke, except to offer a perfunctory, "Yeah, sure," whenever Margaret asked about his day. The silence was heavier than usual. Later, after Margaret had retired to her room, Jack claimed he had work to finish and disappeared back into his office. Anna wanted to trust her husband, tried for hours to talk herself out of the suspicion now blooming in her chest. But as she moved through their too-quiet condo, she began to notice other things. The scent of unfamiliar perfume on Jack's shirt cuff. The sudden influx of late-night meetings. The odd way he left his phone charging in the bathroom and locked the screen when she entered. Days passed. Anna started to feverishly replay every conversation, every late return, every business trip Jack had claimed was last minute. The growing sense of betrayal gnawed at her, yet she told no one, not her mother in Oregon, not her new friends from the office. Instead, Anna channeled her energy into observation and careful attention, loyal to her gut and determined not to be deceived by plausible explanations. It was in mid-April that Anna decided to confirm her fears. She searched gently at first, glancing at Jack's calendar when he left his laptop unattended, checking his jacket pockets for receipts from restaurants she didn't recognize. One Friday evening, Jack said he had an emergency meeting and left before dinner. With her nerves raw, Anna waited by the window far later than she cared to admit. watching headlights sweep across the street as time dragged by. When Jack returned past midnight, Anna pretended to sleep. He smelled of whiskey and French cologne, nothing like his usual aftershave. The next morning, after Jack left for a run, Anna quietly checked the jacket he had worn out. Inside, she found a crumpled parking garage stub stamped with the name of a boutique downtown hotel. Her throat tightened as she stared at the evidence, mute, damning. Piecing together what she could, Anna noticed he'd exchanged text messages late at night with a contact simply labeled J. Every message was swiftly deleted, but once, by luck or carelessness, she glimpsed one before it vanished. Anna's hands shook, her breath caught somewhere between a sob and a scream. For an agonizing hour, she sat with this truth, her mind racing in all directions. Anger, disbelief, humiliation, heartbreak. The world she'd painstakingly built in Chicago began to spin. Her career, her tenuous peace with Margaret, the sacrifices she'd made for her marriage. Had it all been for nothing? And yet, rage quickly crystallized into something almost cold and sharp. Anna had known hardship before, sharp-tongued relatives, heartbreaks, even grief at leaving her hometown, but nothing hurt quite like this. The one person she trusted above all others had made her a stranger in her own home. Unlike the tearful women in the movies she'd watched growing up, Anna found herself unwilling to confront Jack right away. She needed time, and she needed proof. For days, Anna quietly documented what she could. She kept the hotel stub, took photos of odd receipts, and transcribed what messages she could glimpse before Jack deleted them. She didn't dare share any of this with Margaret, who seemed more distant than ever. If she noticed at all, she gave no sign. In the office, Anna tried to hide the storm brewing inside. She worked longer hours, muscling her way through deadlines, pushing herself harder, determined not to show any cracks. Her manager noticed her focus, but not her pain. Her coworkers praised her drive, mistaking her silence for ambition, not heartbreak. At home, Margaret's expectations offered no respite. If anything, Margaret grew sharper. Critique came more swiftly, her sighs heavier, her admonishments tinged with resentment. "You should spend more time with Jack," Margaret remarked one night, eyeing Anna over her glasses. "He's under a lot of stress. Maybe if you cooked more, things would feel normal again." Anna clenched her teeth and nodded, fighting the urge to scream that her world was anything but normal. Anna's loneliness felt bone deep, but she would not allow herself to fall apart. At night, she scrolled through online forums for women facing infidelity, taking comfort in the stories of others who found the strength to move forward. Slowly, her terror of discovery morphed into a cautious resolve to protect herself, and if it came to it, her future child. She spent evenings researching divorce laws in Illinois, quietly stashing away financial documents and making backup copies of her important records. For the first time since arriving in Chicago, Anna's world narrowed into something clear: survival, self-respect, and the possibility of justice. On a pale Sunday morning, Anna stood on the balcony and watched the sun fight its way through the clouds. The city seemed quieter than usual, as if the world was holding its breath along with her. Half grateful, half terrified of what she might become, Anna made herself a silent promise. This betrayal would not break her. If Jack, and by extension, Margaret, thought they could reduce her to a spectator in her own life, they were mistaken. She would gather her proof, she would wait and watch until the time was right. Anna was done playing the part of the grateful daughter-in-law, the invisible wife. She would reclaim her dignity, slowly but surely, one quiet act of defiance at a time. What began as a marriage built on youthful hope was ending in icy clarity. Anna's heart ached, but inside her, a new kind of strength flickered, one that even Jack, with all his lies, could not extinguish, laying the groundwork for revenge. For days, Anna lived inside a storm of resolve and trembling uncertainty. After the night she confirmed Jack's affair, the boundaries of her world shifted. Grief and humiliation flickered at the edge of every thought, but Anna refused to let them take over. She didn't allow herself the luxury of rageful outbursts or tearful confrontations. At least not yet. Instead, a colder, steadier determination set in. She would not become a victim of her own story. If betrayal had found her, she would turn its sting into a weapon. The first order of business was organization. Late at night, Anna sat on the edge of her bed with a notebook, recording every irregular expense, every work trip that had started to feel suspicious. She uploaded photos of receipts onto a secure cloud account and took screenshots of hotel booking confirmations still lingering in Jack's inbox. The evidence could not be left to chance. She needed proof that could stand up in court if she chose that path. Some nights, she retreated to the bathroom under the hum of the shower and recorded her own voice. Reminders, suspicions, things not to forget. Each brief memo a thread in a private tapestry of survival. As the days went on, Anna learned to move quietly within the house. She grew adept at reading Margaret's routines, sensing when she'd step out for her book club meetings or take her afternoon walk. In those precious windows, Anna would photograph family paperwork, scan through drawers for insurance documents, and quietly assemble everything she might eventually need: bank statements, mortgage papers, copies of her marriage certificate. The process was starkly businesslike, almost mechanical, but Anna welcomed the detachment. At work, Anna harnessed her private turmoil as fuel. She plunged into her projects with an intensity that startled even her closest colleagues. She volunteered for new campaigns, scheduled one-on-ones with her manager, and requested that she be considered for an upcoming leadership mentorship program. If her life at home was teetering, Anna decided, she would at least carve out a fortress of competence beyond its walls. Still, she sensed her emotional world sharpening into something fierce and solitary. Lunch, breaks, once moments of idle conversation and escape, became research sessions. Anna scrolled through legal advice forums, reading stories from women locked in similar struggles. Some who felt trapped, some who had wrested their freedom with ingenuity or grit. She took notes. Which Chicago divorce attorneys came highly recommended? How to discreetly open a private bank account? What the Illinois courts prioritized in custodial decisions. One rainy afternoon, Anna slipped out of the office early and met up with Lily, a coworker she'd grown to trust. They settled into a quiet corner of a cafe, the kind of place filled with the chatter of strangers and the smell of burnt espresso. Anna confided in measured terms. She mentioned the growing distance with Jack, the feeling that she was being erased inside her own marriage. "I know this sounds cold," Anna said, her hands anxiously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "But I'm done waiting for someone to save me. I want to know how to protect myself in every way." Lily listened carefully, then leaned in and shared her own family's story of escape and rebuilding after infidelity. "You're smart to plan," she said softly. "Get every document, every dollar, every text you can, and talk to a lawyer. Don't wait for things to get uglier." Encouraged, Anna scheduled an anonymous consultation with a reputable divorce attorney in the city. She took care to use a friend's number for the call, met the lawyer discreetly after work, and described her situation without revealing more than necessary. The attorney listened and provided clear advice. Begin tracking joint accounts, avoid escalating conflict at home, and, most importantly, silently build her case. Evidence mattered, as did her public composure. In the eyes of the court, Anna's stability, clarity, and ability to provide for her child would outweigh any accusations, no matter how dramatic. That evening, Anna scrolled endlessly through articles about child custody in Illinois, legal strategies for confronting a cheating spouse, and the emotional fallout for children. She wasn't pregnant, but understood that if she hoped for children in the future, her actions now would shape the kind of life she could provide. Every click, every note, every rushed consultation with legal forums became a brick in the wall of her strategy. While Anna never found pleasure in the deception her plan required, she couldn't ignore the need for a practical kind of cunning. Some part of her grieved the woman she had once been, open, trusting, happy just to be in love. Now she watched herself become someone else, sharp-eyed, methodical, unyielding. Instead of a gentle partner, she was a vigilant strategist, quietly untangling herself from the bonds of disappointment. At home, Anna's demeanor grew composed, almost unreadable. She masked her anxiety from Jack and Margaret by keeping her words brief and her tone neutral. Jack seemed oblivious, lost in his work and furtive amusements, while Margaret interpreted Anna's new restraint as a sign of compliance. Anna no longer fought small battles over dinner times, recipes, or household routines. Instead, she agreed. She nodded. She faded into the background, free to observe without drawing suspicion. To maintain her sanity and inner strength, Anna sought out the company of resilient women. She began attending networking events at women's business associations. At a Saturday brunch sponsored by a local nonprofit, she listened to women share stories about building careers, surviving divorce, and reimagining motherhood on their own terms. Surrounded by these women, Anna realized that strength was contagious. Every tale she heard added fuel to her quiet rebellion. Through these meetings, Anna found a mentor in Julia, an executive who had weathered her own painful divorce. Julia offered Anna honest advice. Don't wait for dignity. Take it back. People will try to make you feel powerless, especially when your world is crumbling. But no one gets to decide your worth but you. One evening, steeling herself, Anna began consolidating her financial position. She quietly set up a checking account in her own name and set aside small deposits from her salary after each pay period, so small they were unlikely to be noticed. She inventoried her valuables and secured sentimental items from her parents, hidden away with a trusted coworker just in case she needed to leave quickly. Anna's true transformation came at night, sitting in silence on her balcony as the April air began to warm. She no longer stared at the city in doubt, but with steel in her eyes. The pain of betrayal hadn't lessened. It burned differently now. Instead of fueling despair, it pushed her to action. She resolved that her future, whatever it might cost, whatever it demanded, would not be dictated by those who underestimated her. There would be no revenge in the tabloid sense, no melodramatic showdowns. Instead, Anna's retribution would be the slow, deliberate reclaiming of her freedom, her stability, and her self-respect. She would be the master of her own story. And in the quiet of that spring night, Anna began to feel, for the first time since the day she'd arrived in Chicago, the dim but certain outline of hope forming within her, the promise of a new chapter written on her own terms, confrontation. Anna spent weeks preparing herself for the moment she would bring Jack's lies into the open. Every evening, she rehearsed possible conversations, her mind spinning through 1,000 outcomes, some ending with apology and redemption, others with explosive denial and blame. But no amount of mental rehearsal could brace her for the churning nausea that threatened to overwhelm her as she finally chose the day. It was a cold, restless Saturday morning when Anna found herself alone in the kitchen. Sunlight glancing through the windows and firing dust motes into golden pinpricks. The night before, she had finally printed out the damning hotel receipts, screenshots, and carefully compiled evidence, tucking them securely inside a plain manila folder. Margaret's footsteps echoed on the hardwood somewhere behind her, but Anna ignored them. This confrontation would be between her and Jack alone, or so she hoped. Jack returned from his morning errands in a crisp shirt and the edgy energy he wore whenever he was hiding something. He barely glanced at Anna as he hunted for his laptop charger, muttering greetings while checking his phone. Anna steeled herself, heart thumping, as she summoned him to the living room. Margaret, sensing the tension, hovered by the base of the stairs, pretending to dust. "Jack, can we talk?" Anna kept her voice steady, folding her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. He sat with a practiced sigh, impatient. "What's up? I don't have a lot of time." Make time," Anna interrupted, more sharply than she meant. The folder lay heavy on the coffee table between them. Margaret watched, silent, her eyes narrowed. For a breathless moment, Anna just looked at her husband, measuring the lines of stress and calculation in his face. Then she pushed the folder toward him. "Open it, now." Jack's brow creased as he leafed quickly through the contents. The bills, the hotel stubs, the phone records, the screenshots of late-night messages signed with a woman's name he had never spoken aloud at home. His mouth opened, closed. His fingers gripped the pages so hard they began to crumple. What is all this?" Jack stammered, a flush blooming across his neck. "Were you spying on me?" Anna drew a slow breath, unwilling to let him seize the narrative. "No, Jack, I was surviving. You left me alone every night, made excuses, lied to my face. Tell me it isn't true," she demanded. "Tell me who Jessica is. Tell me anything except another lie." Margaret moved to speak, but Anna stopped her with a raised hand. "Not now, please." An explosive silence filled the room. Jack's defenses crumbled, replaced by brittle defiance. "You don't understand how hard it's been adjusting to all of this. I work late so we can keep this place, so Margaret can be comfortable. I needed someone to talk to." Anger, cold and clarifying, flooded Anna's chest. "So you chose to destroy us instead?" Jack looked away, jaw twitching. Margaret, unable to hold herself back, finally intervened. "Now just a minute, Anna. Every marriage has ups and downs. You shouldn't air dirty laundry like this," she scolded. "Maybe if you had focused more on Jack and less on your job, things wouldn't be so tense." Anna stared at Margaret, stunned not by the words, but by their predictability. "So it's my fault for wanting a life outside this house? For working to keep myself sane? Blame me if you want, Margaret. But I won't carry your guilt or Jack's any longer." Jack slumped, defeated for the moment, his hands limp on the scattered evidence. Anna felt a strange dissociation watching her world, her marriage, her dignity, the fragile peace she had tried to preserve, splinter and fragment, all in the space of a few minutes. Margaret's expression sharpened from scorn to outright hostility. "You're overreacting. You're still family, Anna. We can get through this if you just come to your senses." Something in Anna snapped. "I'm not your project, and this is not my family anymore. I can't pretend that everything is fine just to maintain appearances." Silence stretched between them, jagged and raw. With trembling but certain hands, Anna gathered her folder and stood. "I'll be staying with a friend for a while," she said, her voice quiet but resonant. "I need space to think, to decide what comes next. I'll be in touch about the legal and financial arrangements." Jack opened his mouth, pleading or bargaining, she couldn't tell, but Anna shook her head. "Don't. I'll send my lawyer's contact on Monday." Margaret drew herself tall, indignant. "What about the family? What about your vows?" Anna looked at both of them. Her husband, pale and slack-jawed, and his mother, rigid with disappointment. She felt strangely empty, as if grief and resolve had finally burned away every illusion. "I loved you, Jack. I wanted this to work, but I refused to lose myself to your mistakes or Margaret's standards any longer. If I stay, I'll disappear, and I won't let that happen." The days that followed moved in a blur of logistics and numbed resolve. Anna packed her essentials in silence, leaving behind the wedding album and the gifts Margaret had pressed on her with icy warmth. She called Lily, who welcomed her with open arms in a spare bedroom, refusing to offer platitudes. Anna's attorney took charge of the paperwork, responding to Jack's emails with professional restraint. In the first nights away, Anna curled up on unfamiliar sheets, flooded by waves of sadness, fury, and relief. The enormity of her decision swept over her, its risks, its freedoms. She didn't know what the future held, whether peace or further struggle would win. But for the first time since setting foot in Chicago, Anna felt certain that every new day was hers to shape. She was no longer caged by expectation or betrayal. Outside the window, the city rattled on, indifferent but alone. Anna breathed in the fresh air of possibility, blinking back exhausted tears. She had faced her tormentors and claimed her right to choose. Whatever battles remained, legal, emotional, or otherwise, she knew she would survive, not as a shadow, but as a woman, finally, fiercely awake. Emergence. The days after Anna's departure were both a reckoning and a renewal. The city, once an indifferent blur beyond the window, now felt like a living force, full of challenge and possibility. Anna moved through the streets with a mixture of nerves and newfound determination. her senses sharpened not by fear, but by the freedom of owning her next choices. Her first days living with Lily were quiet, almost reverent. Anna was careful not to intrude, always picking up after herself, always grateful for small kindnesses, a cup of herbal tea waiting for her after another long day, or a sympathetic note left on her pillow in Lily's careful handwriting. Yet as time passed, Anna noticed a subtle shift inside her. She felt less like a guest in someone else's life and more like the architect of her own. For the first time in months, she reclaimed her mornings, jogging at dawn through Lincoln Park, breathing in the crisp air, reminding herself that her body belonged to her and her alone. Anna poured herself into work with an energy her colleagues had never seen. New campaigns seemed to take shape under her touch, her ideas sparking late-night brainstorming sessions or riveting morning presentations. She found herself increasingly called upon for advice, and her self-confidence grew with every successful project launch. The account managers who had once looked at her as a polite, unassuming West Coast transplant now started inviting her to lead client meetings and creative reviews. After weeks of proving herself, Anna landed the chance to head a career-defining initiative, the rebranding of a major city nonprofit. In meetings, she spoke with steady authority, mixing warmth and firmness in equal measure. The client praised her instinct to blend tradition with modernity, and Anna's firm trusted her vision, giving her full control for the first time. She often worked late, but the exhaustion was no longer draining. It was purposeful, almost exhilarating. To her surprise, a local business journal reached out for an interview, eager to spotlight the new face of creative leadership in Chicago's nonprofit sector. Anna's transformation was not lost on those around her. Her quiet resilience, once mistaken for passivity, now read as deep composure. Coworkers, young interns, and even old friends from Oregon called with questions, requests, or simply encouragement. Anna wrote back, offering advice where she could, never forgetting how much it meant, in the darkest moments, to feel witnessed and believed. Little by little, she built a network of women who understood both the cost and the power of resilience. Yet, for all her outward success, Anna's private life required fresh courage every day. The legal proceedings, with Jack ground forward, slow and meticulous, Anna devoted hours to collecting documents, answering questions from her lawyer, and explaining, again and again, why she deserved the right to build a new life on her own terms. She grew skilled at separating the past from the future, at recognizing which wounds required silence and which demanded to be spoken aloud. In court, Anna learned to stand her ground. The judge listened intently as she explained her career trajectory, her commitment to stability, and her willingness to provide a nurturing home. Anna spoke with a calm clarity, honed by sleepless nights and fierce determination. Her legal team emphasized not only Jack's infidelity, but his recent erratic behavior, noting missed appointments and unreliable communication, evidence that the court, they hoped, would weigh heavily when determining her suitability as a future custodial parent. At the same time, Anna refused to let bitterness dominate her heart. There were moments, alone with her thoughts in Lily's apartment, or speaking quietly to her mother on the phone, when sorrow washed over her in slow, heavy waves. She let herself grieve, but she did not drown. Instead, she gradually allowed hope to return, not the fragile hope that things might revert to what they once were, but the muscular kind that builds new dreams upon broken ground. Anna became increasingly aware of how much she still wanted to be a mother someday. The thought was both daunting and motivating. She began to research parenting groups, connect with women who had redefined family on their own terms, and quietly save for a home she could someday share with a child. The idea was no longer abstract or attached to Jack's vision of family. It belonged to her and it imbued her days with stronger purpose. As weeks slipped into months, Anna's name became quietly recognized beyond her office walls. She spoke on discussion panels about women rebuilding after divorce, contributed to charity events, and mentored interns who reminded her of her own early days. Her social media presence, never a tool for self-promotion before, now reflected both honesty and uplift. She shared not just achievements, but also setbacks, inviting honest conversations rather than curated perfection. More than one message from strangers drifted into her inbox. "Thank you for showing us it's possible to start over." In the evenings, Anna met with Lily's friends or strolled along city sidewalks, discovering small joys: a jazz quartet in a subway station, the mural of wildflowers on a brick wall, a child's laughter, shrill and bright, in a playground nearby. Slowly, the ache inside her chest softened, replaced by gratitude for things she had once overlooked: her own laughter, the taste of strong coffee at sunrise, the hush of an unwritten future. If Margaret and Jack hoped for her swift retreat, they never got it. Jack's half-hearted apologies and attempts at negotiation, so common in the early weeks, were met with firm, polite refusals. Margaret's cold phone calls grew less frequent until, eventually, they stopped altogether. Anna kept her distance, careful not to invite unnecessary conflict. But even so, news of her accomplishments sometimes drifted back to old circles. Anna never gloated. Instead, she answered kindness with kindness, her dignity intact and unbowed. Her desire for custody, for building a stable environment, became ever more present in her mind. Anna no longer worried about appearing selfish or ambitious. She understood clearly now that her drive was not just for herself, but for the future she hoped to create. As her lawyer updated her on the next legal milestones, Anna steeled herself for the coming battles, but she no longer felt helpless or alone. On a bright May morning, Anna stood at her apartment window and watched the sun bleed gold over the sprawling city she now claimed as her own. No longer just surviving, she was creating, rewriting her story, and by example giving countless others permission to do the same. She had emerged from the wreckage not as a warning, but as a beacon, a living witness that dignity, courage, and self-worth were within reach, even after heartbreak. She smiled to herself as she picked up her notebook, its pages now filled with goals, sketches, and half-formed plans for the future. Anna's journey was far from over, but one thing was certain: never again would she allow herself to disappear. The world had underestimated her grit, but Anna, finally, was not afraid to shine the judgment. The months of waiting, of legal wrangling, and emotional endurance came to a head on a rainy Monday morning in late June. The city outside was blanketed in a drizzle so persistent it seemed to blur the skyscrapers and hush the streets, as if Chicago itself were holding its breath. For Anna, time moved both too quickly and agonizingly slow. The last few nights, she had barely slept, rising early to review her notes one last time, to go through every piece of evidence, to muster words that might do justice to her journey. She arrived at the courthouse with Lily by her side, both women clutching umbrellas and steaming coffee. Anna was grateful for her friend's quiet presence, the warmth of a hand squeezed in encouragement, the way Lily steadied Anna's nerves without words. Inside, fluorescent lights glared off linoleum floors. Everything felt sterile, permanent, and intimidating. Anna's attorney met her at the door, a sheaf of documents under one arm, and led her through the corridors with brisk efficiency. Jack was already in the hallway, dressed sharply in a navy suit, hair combed just so. Beside him stood Margaret, severe in a charcoal jacket, her mouth set in the hard line Anna had come to know so well. The sight of them sent Anna's stomach to knots, but she returned their gaze with steady determination. There was nothing left unsaid between them now, only the formalities of legal ritual and the hope for a kind of justice, even if it would always feel incomplete. The courtroom itself was smaller than Anna had imagined, almost claustrophobic in its formality. At one table sat Anna and her attorney. At the other, Jack, his lawyer, and Margaret, who refused to be sidelined even now. The judge, a dignified woman of perhaps 60, presided with an air of calm gravity, her eyes sharp and surprisingly kind. Anna found herself grateful for that. She needed kindness, but fairness most of all. The hearing began with procedural details, a recounting of marriage dates, the filing of papers, a dry cataloging of shared assets and debts. Anna endured the monotony, waiting for the part that would truly decide her future, the matter of custody, in the court's evaluation of who would provide the most stable, nurturing home for their child, one that Anna hoped, believed, was still possible. Jack was called to the stand first. He testified in measured tones, careful to appear remorseful for his infidelity, without admitting to malice. Things were difficult, he said, voice low. We both made mistakes. I worked long hours for the family. I regret my choices, but I want to be an active father. His lawyer framed the affair as a lapse in judgment, emphasizing Jack's professional success and resources. Margaret's testimony followed, laced with undertones of judgment. She painted Anna as willful and withdrawn, implying that Anna's career focus made her an inattentive wife. Anna's ambitions are admirable, but family must come first, she intoned, echoing the refrain Anna had heard so often. Anna felt an old pang of fury, but it was soon replaced by pity. Margaret spoke like someone afraid of losing control, not just a son. Then it was Anna's turn. She stood with knees trembling, but her voice was clear and unwavering. Her attorney led her through the timeline of their marriage, the challenges of adjusting to Chicago, and the sacrifices she made trying to be both a supportive wife and her own person. Anna spoke gently but truthfully of Jack's absences, the isolation she felt in the household, Margaret's rigid expectations. Much of the judge's attention, Anna realized, was focused on the future. How would Anna provide for a child? What support system did she have? Would she encourage Jack's involvement or seek to alienate him? Anna answered honestly, I want my child to know both parents, but I believe stability means more than physical comfort. I believe in love, transparency, and the freedom to become who you are meant to be. That's what I hope to give my family. Her attorney produced the evidence: Jack's hotel receipts, the dozens of text messages exchanged with Jessica, the unexplained withdrawals from their joint account. Anna felt exposed and raw as documents were passed to the judge, but she kept her head held high. This wasn't vengeance, it was the truth, and she was no longer ashamed of needing it spoken aloud. Cross-examination was brutal. Jack's lawyer tried to paint Anna as cold, suggesting that her independence made her unavailable to her husband. Did you ever consider leaving your job to focus on your marriage? Anna answered simply, leaving my work would mean leaving part of myself. I could not be a better wife or mother by abandoning who I am. The judge listened, asked pointed questions, took notes. Hours passed, testimony, evidence, legal arguments layered with emotion and paperwork. Anna's hands sweated against the wood of the table as each side delivered closing statements. Her attorney's words were firm and compassionate. This is not a case of blame, but of what is best for the child, and for Anna, who has shown enormous resilience and unwavering commitment to building a stable life. Then everything went quiet. The judge left the room to consider her decision, and for 20 minutes, Anna sat in a silence so thick she thought she might suffocate in it. Jack stared at the table. Margaret glared at nothing. Lily squeezed Anna's shoulder. When the judge returned, everyone straightened. Her ruling was delivered in tones both gentle and final. The marriage would be formally dissolved. Custody would be awarded primarily to Anna, with Jack granted visitation, contingent on his participation in family counseling. The judge spoke directly to Anna. You have demonstrated not only a capacity for stability, but a willingness to foster healing, even after deep hurt. Your child will need that strength. A wave of disbelief, then relief, crashed over Anna. She felt tears threaten, but she held herself together, managing only a soft, "Thank you, Your Honor." Margaret finally lost her composure. A loud, indignant whisper. A hand grasped hard around her purse strap. Jack was unreadable, defeated maybe, but more lost than angry. Anna found she could pity him, if only for a moment. Paperwork was signed. Final words exchanged. The gavel came down, and Anna stood, steadied by Lily, gathering her bag and folder. The air in the courthouse felt lighter as she stepped into the hallway. A burden lifted. A battle survived. Outside, the raindrops caught the morning sun, turning the city into a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. She walked forward, not triumphant, not vengeful, but fully, finally free. There would be more challenges: co-parenting, healing, building a life worthy of the faith the court had placed in her. But Anna no longer felt small or invisible within her story. She was the author now. And this chapter, for all its scars, ended with the justice she'd fought so long to achieve. Consequences and reckoning, the dust of the trial slowly settled, leaving in its wake a changed landscape for all three lives. The headlines and courthouse whispers had faded, but the true consequences unfolded more quietly, etched into daily routines and restless dreams. For Jack, the days after the judgment felt like a slow, painful unraveling. His tidy life, the one he had assumed would always be there, shaped by ambition and maintained by silent agreement, slipped through his grasp. The condo that had once symbolized arrival now felt cavernous in Anna's absence. Rooms echoed with unfamiliar quiet. The scent of her lavender hand cream lingered only faintly on drawers she'd emptied of her belongings. Jack tried to maintain normalcy at work, but news of the divorce filtered through office gossip and awkward glances. He threw himself into late nights and high-stakes meetings, but the edge that once made him indispensable seemed dulled. His mistakes, so easily rationalized before, now weighed on him. Missed birthdays, the gradual neglect of a once bright marriage, and the choices he never fully owned. Worst of all was the realization that the life he'd built had not merely fractured, it had changed Anna, and in many ways, he had not expected the outcome that now defined them both. Margaret, too, found her world smaller and less hospitable. In the aftermath of the trial, her control over the family narrative dissolved with the judge's ruling. Friends from her gated neighborhood stopped calling as often. The polite invitations to luncheons were replaced by conspicuously absent RSVPs. In private, Margaret replayed her testimony, her words of judgment, and felt their hollowness. Without Anna in the house, there was no one to direct, no rhythms to enforce beyond her own. She resented the vacuum, but she resented even more the pitying looks she received. A fallen matriarch in a family no longer whole. Margaret would never admit it to herself, but there were hours, late at night, when she wondered who she was outside the Porter legacy and why she had never managed to hold her family together. Jack's relationship with Margaret grew tense and brittle. The two spoke less, seeing in each other uncomfortable truths. Jack, for all his adult independence, realized how much he deferred to his mother's standards. Margaret, meanwhile, confronted for the first time the limits of her rules and her striving. For all her certainty that Anna had destabilized their traditions, Margaret could not ignore the possibility that her unyielding manner had helped drive her daughter-in-law away. The custody arrangement added new layers of tension and regret. Jack attended counseling as mandated by the court, sitting through uncomfortable conversations about parental responsibility and the impact of marital conflict on future children. The sessions forced Jack to listen to Anna's voice as she described her hopes and her struggles, to experts who refused to let him hide behind apologies. The idea of joint parenting was both a comfort and a wound. He wanted to be a father, but the world he'd imagined was now out of reach, fractured and rearranged by his own hands. Outside the bounds of court, orders, Jack tried to reach Anna. He sent emails, formal, then pleading, then apologetic, and received brief, respectful replies. He offered to meet and talk, to apologize in person. But Anna was resolute. She was not cruel, but she would not look back. There was an unspoken line between them now, drawn not only by legal directives, but by necessity, a boundary that protected her hard-won independence. Margaret, in her own way, tried to mend the rift. She sent a letter, painfully formal, to Anna, expressing regret for any pain I may have caused. The words, carefully chosen and brittle, spoke of tradition and hope for cordial relations in the future. Anna read the letter, set it in a drawer, and decided it was not her job to soothe Margaret's wounds. Forgiveness could wait. For now, silence was a shield. Yet Anna did not harden into bitterness. The aftermath for her was a kind of delicate rebuilding. The victory in court was not the end of her struggles, but a beginning, a time to live out the principles she fought so fiercely to protect. The first weeks were full of uncertainty. Some mornings she woke from anxious dreams, her mind tangled in old arguments. But each day also brought a faint, fierce sense of progress. Anna made a ritual of small acts to define her new life. She decorated her apartment with light, plants at the windowsill, cheerful prints from an art market downtown, a blanket from home in Oregon gracing her couch. She practiced the freedom of making plans without negotiation. Impromptu dinners, late-night walks to the lake, weekend retreats with friends. The anxiety that sometimes wrapped around her chest still lingered. But now, it was leavened by relief and, increasingly, by hope. Financially, Anna carried burdens, but also pride. She paid bills, managed her accounts, and set aside savings. Each transaction, a mark of independence wrested from years of feeling small. Her workplace continued to be a refuge and a proving ground. She was offered a promotion, recognition for her leadership, during a challenging nonprofit campaign. She accepted, quietly joyful, knowing that her success came from her alone. Socially, Anna's world widened, even as some relationships faded. There were friends who drifted away, uncomfortable with choosing sides, and Anna let them go without rancor. In their place came new connections, women she met at book clubs and community centers, fellow professionals who admired her integrity and resolve, neighbors greeted over borrowed cups of sugar or shared laughter in the laundry room. The custody decision, while a legal safeguard, also forced Anna to live her values. She stayed committed to civility, allowing Jack his role when appropriate, resolving never to poison a future child with old resentment. In therapy, she found language to process her ordeal, learning to forgive, not for Jack or Margaret, but for herself. Jack, meanwhile, found the cost of loss greater than he had imagined. His career stabilized but no longer defined him. Friends grew scarce, unwilling to be drawn into the drama of his past. Quiet moments became reckoning points. On evenings when loneliness pressed in, he wondered what love was meant to look like, and whether he had ever truly known Anna at all. Sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he remembered her laughter echoing off the walls of their first apartment before expectation, judgment, and betrayal. Margaret, left to face her own empty house, began to change in tiny, invisible ways. She volunteered at her church, found her voice again in the choir, and sometimes missed Anna with a bittersweet ache. The Porter family dinners, once grand affairs, shrank to quiet meals for one. She slowly learned the lesson of letting go, even if too late for amends. For Anna, the months after the judgment etched a new chapter, a narrative of self possession, quiet confidence, and rare, hard won peace. She was not unscarred, but she was unmistakably free. Her journey had required sacrifice, demanded resilience, and exacted a price from all involved. Yet in every loss, Anna found the seed of possibility. In the stillness before dawn, as Chicago stretched outside her window, Anna no longer wondered if she belonged. She had paid her dues, measured her worth not against their judgment, but in her own brave steps forward. And in the city's heartbeat, Anna heard, at last, the sound of a life that was hers alone to claim new beginnings. The first light of summer crept softly through Anna's new apartment windows, warming the pale cream walls and scattering across scattered toys, stacks of picture books, and half-folded laundry. It was quiet here, quiet in a way that sometimes caught Anna off guard after all the storms. But in the silence was possibility, not emptiness. And it was in these gentle mornings, as she watched her child breathe peacefully and the city slowly woke, that Anna realized she was finally living a life she had shaped for herself. In the months since the judgment, Anna had built a home defined not by perfection or tradition, but by small acts of care and intention. The apartment was modest, a simple 2-bedroom in a leafy neighborhood on the city's edge, but every corner reflected Anna's gentle touch. She hung her mother's old quilt above the bed, placed a row of sunflowers in a chipped vase on the windowsill, and let her child pick out bright curtains for the little bedroom. There were no more harsh rules about dinner times or the correct way to fold a napkin. Laughter and comfort mattered more now than routine. Anna's days took on a steady rhythm, shaped by work, parenthood, and renewal. Her mornings began early, savoring a hot cup of coffee while her child colored at the kitchen table, sunlight catching on their wild hair. The small rituals, brushing teeth, packing lunches, choosing what to wear, became their own kind of daily celebration. Anna tried to show her child every day the freedom she was finally learning to believe in, the right to choose, the beauty in making mistakes, the importance of kindness and courage. After drop-off at the local preschool, Anna commuted downtown. A pleasant short ride on the Blue Line. The pressure that once haunted her was gone. Her colleagues at the marketing firm trusted her expertise and valued her as a leader, and the mentorship she'd once sought from strong women she now offered to young staffers uncertain of their own voices. At lunch, she met with nonprofit partners, brainstorming how to help other women in transition, sharing resources, listening to their stories, offering not advice, but the assurance that starting over did not mean starting from nothing. Outside the office, Anna's life blossomed with new friendships and traditions. She hosted low-key meals for a circle of parents and neighbors who had welcomed her with cheerful warmth. Lily remained a loyal confidant and companion, sometimes dropping by just to share a dessert or trade stories of single motherhood. Weekends found Anna at the park, chasing her child across grassy fields or wandering farmers' markets for tart apples and warm bread. The city that once felt alien was now a place of belonging, a tapestry of different paths, none of them perfect, all of them real. Anna also found time, at last, for herself. She took up painting again, sometimes rising before dawn to work quietly at the small easel tucked into her bedroom corner. Color returned to her life, literally and figuratively. She ran along the lakeshore at sunrise, the wind crisp and sharp, her heartbeat a reminder that she still had strength left to discover. She volunteered at a community center, teaching creative writing workshops to women who, like her, sought new stories after heartbreak. Their gratitude fueled her own resolve, linking her journey to theirs. Gradually, the memories of her life with Jack and Margaret faded into something less raw. She no longer saw her worth measured by their disappointment or judgment. If the past crept back in a song, a scent, a sudden pang, Anna let it pass. She no longer needed to armor herself against regret, for she had proven to herself the value of forgiveness, not for them, perhaps, but for herself. She understood now that healing did not mean forgetting. It meant reclaiming her narrative and refusing to be defined by what was broken. Co-parenting with Jack became, if not easy, at least civil. Their exchanges were polite, focused always on their child's well-being. Jack showed up, sometimes awkward, sometimes genuinely trying, and Anna, after months of confusion and grief, found that she could be gracious without opening old wounds. She made space for her child to love both parents, establishing gentle boundaries rather than walls. Margaret, too, sent occasional cards, simple notes, sometimes with a photo, sometimes only a line of careful wisdom, signaling a hesitant desire to remain connected in whatever small ways life now allowed. The future still held shadows. There were moments when Anna lay awake, heart pounding, unsure if she was enough mother, enough provider, enough whole. On those nights, she rose and quietly checked on her child, soothed by the rise and fall of their breath. In the dim light, she whispered promises of patience, of honesty, of meeting each day with hope, even when afraid. But more often than not, Anna greeted each morning with resilience and gratitude. She planned small adventures, a trip to the planetarium, a train ride to visit her parents in Oregon, a backyard picnic just for two. She began saving for a down payment on her own condo, not merely as a financial milestone, but as a symbol of her journey. And as she grew more confident in her role as both breadwinner and nurturer, she found herself sought out for advice by others: women at work, parents at school, former friends, who now wanted to know how she did it. Anna answered them all the same way: one step at a time. Sometimes you fall back, but you get up and you keep moving. She remained mindful of the responsibility her story carried. At the suggestion of her therapist, Anna began keeping a journal, recording not only her triumphs, but her doubts and small failures. Later, she would read these entries and marvel at the distance she had traveled. From a frightened newcomer in a strange city to a woman who had faced betrayal, judgment, and loneliness, and chosen, again and again, not to hide, but to rise. One Friday evening, Anna stood on her balcony, her child by her side, both gazing out across the city as the sky blushed with the colors of dusk. Her child slipped a small, sticky hand into hers and leaned against her. "I like our home, Mommy," they said softly. Anna squeezed back. "So do I," she replied. "So do I." In that moment, Anna recognized her greatest victory, not in the courtroom, not in the office, not even in the daily triumphs of self sufficiency, but in the love and sanity she and her child had created together. It was enough. It was everything. The city pulsed below them, alive and mercifully indifferent. Anna looked out, not with fear, but expectation, knowing that every ending was also a beginning, and that she had earned, in every sense, the right to claim whatever joys tomorrow might bring.